whiskey in my glass tasted like ash, but I kept drinking because it was the only thing stopping me from walking out of that room and ending my marriage right there. I should have left when I first saw Harper laugh like that, her hand lingering too long on his arm, the glow in her eyes brighter than I'd seen in years. But I stayed because I wanted proof. I stayed because some sick part of me needed to hear the words that would break me. It came from him, of course. Damian Ward, 6'2", silver hair styled to look effortless, Armani suit hugging his frame like it had been grown on him. The kind of man who walks into a room and assumes everyone is already looking at him. The kind of man my wife had been spending a lot of late nights at the office with. "Harper, darling," Ward said, loud enough for the whole penthouse to hear, "you've got to introduce me to your—" What do we call him again? Oh, right. He's just the step one husband. I'm the upgrade package. The laughter hit like glass shattering. Expensive people in expensive dresses sipping champagne that cost more than a week's paycheck for most, throwing back their heads and laughing at my expense. I counted 23 people who thought it was funny to humiliate me. My wife laughed the loudest. Her hand, perfect nails, diamond bracelet I'd given her for our anniversary, rested on Ward's sleeve like it belonged there. Like she belonged there, and I stood a few feet away, invisible. No, worse than invisible. I was the punchline. I'm Will Carter, 39 years old, IT consultant. Built my company from nothing in my 20s. Self-made, hard-working, disciplined. Married to Harper, VP at Lux Lifestyle Ventures. On paper, I was living the dream. Big house in Westchester, German cars in the garage, social circles filled with people who measured success by the cut of their suits and the vintage of their wine. And yet in that room, in that moment, I realized I wasn't living a dream at all. I was a placeholder, a seat warmer. A man who thought loyalty and hard work meant something in a world where loyalty was a weakness and hard work was something you hired other people to do. "Will's so sweet," Harper said, her voice dripping with that tone women use when they're about to destroy you in public. "He still thinks success is about working hard and being honest." "It's adorable, really." More laughter, louder. Damian raised his glass, smirking. "To honest work." The way he said it could have stripped paint from the walls. I should have left. Any sane man would have left. But 20 years of building systems had taught me something. When you see a weakness, you don't walk away. You test it. You see how deep the crack goes. I smiled, raised my own glass. "To upgrades," I said. "May they come with warranties." The laughter died. Ward's eyes narrowed. Harper's face went pale, and I wasn't done. "Speaking of upgrades," I continued, voice carrying across the room. "How's that new Maserati running, Damian?" "The one with the custom plates. Upgrade 1, wasn't it?" His jaw clenched. He hadn't told anyone about those plates. I knew because I'd been watching. He was careless, sloppy. "You design systems, you learn things," I said, still smiling. Like how upgrades can break if you push them too hard. Or how vulnerabilities can bring down the whole structure when someone finds them. The message wasn't subtle. Ward caught it. So did Harper. Her hand tightened on his arm. "Will," she hissed. "Maybe we should go home," I finished for her. "Great idea. I've got some reading to catch up on anyway. Email threads, text messages. Amazing how much people communicate these days without realizing who might be listening." I set my champagne flute down and walked out. The silence behind me was deafening. By the time I hit the ground floor and stepped into the New York night, my blood was on fire. My wife, my life, everything I thought I'd built, exposed as a lie in less than 10 minutes. 45 minutes later, I pulled into our Westchester driveway. Harper's BMW rolled in 3 minutes after mine. She came storming into my office, heels like gunshots on the hardwood. "What the hell was that?" she demanded. I was at my desk, laptop open, files spread everywhere. "Research," I said without looking up. "Research?" She snapped. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone. Damian thinks you're some kind of stalker now." "Damian thinks a lot of things," I said, turning the laptop toward her. "Like how you two were going to celebrate the upgrade tomorrow night at his place. Nice selfie, by the way. Very artistic." Her face drained of color. On the screen, Harper in lingerie I'd never seen, sprawled across Ward's sheets. A picture she'd sent to her friend Jill earlier that day, safely backed up to her cloud account. An account she'd forgotten was still linked to our family plan. How did you? I told you. I notice things. I build systems that keep companies running. I also know how to tear them down when someone tries to take what's mine. Her breath hitched. For the first time that night, she looked afraid. I closed the laptop. I also read your divorce plan. The one you sent to Jill. Step 1, humiliate me in public. Step 2, file for divorce while I'm emotionally compromised. Step 3, settlement negotiation. You take half my assets plus alimony because I was supposedly abusive. Step 4, marry Damian, merge everything into his company, and live happily ever after on what I built. Her mouth opened, closed. Then she straightened her shoulders. The fear vanished, replaced by something colder. You're right, she said. About all of it, so what? You think you can stop me? Damian has lawyers, good ones, and I know things about your business practices. That I've been legitimate for 20 years? I cut in. Every contract documented, every tax return filed, every employee properly paid. Harper, you married an honest man. That was your first mistake. Your second was thinking honesty meant weakness. She stared at me. For a moment, I thought I saw the woman I'd married, the one who used to curl up with me on the couch, who cried during our vows, who once told me she believed in us more than anything. But that woman was gone. Maybe she'd never existed. This isn't over, she said finally. No, I agreed. It's not, but it's not going the way you planned either. She stormed out. I sat back down, opened my laptop, and started working, because if they wanted an upgrade, I was going to give them one they'd never forget. The first rule of war is knowing when to fight and when to prepare. 3 days after the penthouse disaster, I was still preparing. Harper had retreated into silence, but silence in a marriage like ours isn't peace. It's plotting. It's calculation. That's why I was sitting across from Gary Morrison at Mickey's Bar in downtown White Plains. Gary had been my best friend since college, back when we lived on ramen noodles and cheap beer, when success meant finding enough quarters for the laundry. These days he owned 3 bars, wore button-down shirts that never wrinkled, and knew more about people than most therapists. So let me get this straight, Gary said, stirring sugar into his coffee with the slow patience of a man who'd seen it all. Your wife is screwing her boss. They're planning to rob you blind in the divorce. And instead of putting a bullet in the guy, you're sitting here sipping coffee? I'm not interested in bullets, I said. I'm interested in leverage. Gary raised an eyebrow. Leverage sounds like the word you use when you want to call it justice, but you're really talking about revenge. Call it what you want. I'm not letting them take everything I built. He studied me for a moment. So what's the move? The move was Patricia Hoffman, Westchester's best divorce attorney, 60 years old, silver hair, eyes that could cut steel. I'd retained her the day after the party. She specialized in corporate and domestic cases, the exact overlap I needed. I met her at a steakhouse that evening. She slid a manila folder across the table before the waitress even poured my water. Your wife and Ward have been sloppy, Patricia said. Hotel receipts, restaurant charges, even a weekend in the Hamptons. Enough for infidelity to void any claim she has on your assets. I opened the folder, flipping through the evidence. Receipts, credit card charges, photos. Harper had charged a $2,300 dinner to our joint card, then tried to mark it as a work expense. Careless. That's not the interesting part, Patricia continued. What's the interesting part? Ward's company is burning cash like a bonfire. 18 months of losses. He's 6 weeks from bankruptcy. Your wife doesn't know it yet, but she's about to jump from a sinking ship to a submarine. I kept flipping through the papers. Financial statements, bank records, email threads between Ward and his accountant. It painted a picture of a man living on borrowed time and borrowed money. There's more, Patricia said. Ward's been promising investors he's about to close a major deal that will save the company. Guess what that deal is? My assets. Exactly. He's been telling people he'll marry into money, specifically your money. The investors are watching closely. If that deal falls through, Ward's creditors will eat him alive. He personally guaranteed $12 million in debt. I leaned back in my chair. For the first time in days, I smiled. So the great Damian Ward isn't as invincible as he looks. Patricia smirked. He never is. His real name's David Warowski. Changed it 15 years ago after a bankruptcy and 2 failed marriages. Both ex-wives say he married them for their money. History tends to repeat itself. That night, I drove home through Westchester's winding roads, headlights cutting through the dark. Harper's BMW was in the driveway. Inside, she was unpacking shopping bags from Saks and Bergdorf Goodman. $4,000 in charges to the joint card. She looked up when I walked in. "We need to talk," she said, like she was the one in control. "About your shopping spree?" I asked. "About being reasonable." She set the bags down, smoothing her dress. "Damian thinks you might be more cooperative if we approach this differently." I followed her into the living room. She'd changed into a black dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. The same dress she'd worn in that photo from Ward's penthouse, the one burned into my brain. "What do you have in mind?" I asked, a clean break. "You keep the business. I keep the house and the investment accounts. We both walk away with dignity." I laughed, a real bitter laugh. "Dignity? You want to talk about dignity? You remember our wedding? That little church in Connecticut. Your father walking you down the aisle. You cried during the vows. I believed in you, Harper. I believed in us. And now you want to trade our life like stocks on the market." Her eyes flickered, just for a moment. Regret? Or just annoyance that I wasn't playing along? "People change," she said finally. "Yes," I said. "They do." The next morning I made my move. Ward's company, Lux Lifestyle Ventures, was privately held but not privately funded. They'd taken money from a consortium of venture capital firms. Those firms had voting rights, enough to remove a CEO if they wanted to. 3 phone calls. 2 meetings. $8 million. That's what it cost me to buy up 41% of the company from nervous investors. Money I'd made over the last 2 years. Money I could afford to burn if it meant watching Ward choke on his arrogance. Friday afternoon, the board convened. Ward strutted into the conference room like a king arriving at his coronation. Then he saw me sitting at the head of the table. "What the hell is he doing here?" Ward demanded. "Mr. Carter is now the majority shareholder," said Patricia Chen from Morrison Capital. "He called this meeting." Ward's face went through 3 shades of red. "Impossible. The shares aren't for sale." "They were," I said, "until your investors realized you've been lying about bankruptcy." "People don't like being lied to." "I never—" "You told investors you were about to acquire new assets. You said it was guaranteed because you were marrying into them. You said that 3 weeks ago, the same day you bought a $4 million car with company money." Silence. The board members shifted uncomfortably. "The problem, Damian, or should I call you David, is that the asset holder isn't interested in being acquired. In fact, the asset holder is more interested in acquiring you." I stood and walked to the whiteboard. "Here's the plan. New management. Real revenue. Full audit of every expenditure from the last 2 years." "You can't do this," Ward sputtered. "I already did. The vote is a formality. All in favor of removing Damian Ward as CEO?" 6 hands went up. His didn't. "Motion carries," I said. "You have 1 hour to clear your office. Security will escort you." Ward's chair clattered as he stood. "This isn't over, Carter. You don't know who you're messing with." "Actually, I know exactly who I'm messing with. David Warowski, 44, 2 bankruptcies, 2 ex-wives who claim you married them for money. 12 million in debt, and now?" "Nothing," he stormed out. I capped the marker and turned back to the board. "Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the future." That evening, I drove home early. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of control. Until I walked into my kitchen, Harper was there. Sitting at the table, and next to her sipping my wine was Damian Ward. My blood went cold. "Bold move," I said. Harper jumped up. "Will, I didn't expect you home so early." "I had a good day at the office," I said. "How about you, Damian?" "Oh, wait, you don't have an office anymore." Ward stood slowly, trying to look intimidating. "Hard to pull off when you've just been fired by the man whose wife you've been screwing." "You think you've won?" He sneered. "I don't think," I said. "I know, your job, your company, your future, and apparently your car keys." I dangled the Maserati keys I'd swiped off the counter. "You can't." "I can. And you're trespassing. 30 seconds to leave before I call the cops." Ward looked at Harper, waiting for her to choose. She hesitated, calculated. Then she said it. "Damian, maybe you should go." The look on his face was worth every penny of the $8 million I'd spent. He left without another word. The house was quiet. Harper poured herself another glass of wine. "I underestimated you," she said softly. "Yes," I said. "You did. What do you want, Will?" It was the question, wasn't it? A week ago, I would have said I wanted my marriage. I would have said I wanted the woman I fell in love with back. But that woman was gone. Maybe she'd never existed. "I want justice," I said. "And I want you both to understand that actions have consequences." She set her glass down, staring at me. And then what? I looked around our kitchen, at the ghosts of breakfasts and late-night talks and plans we'd once made. Then I met her eyes. Then we'll see, I said. But I was lying. I already knew exactly what came next. The thing about revenge is that it doesn't end when the plan works. It ends when the scars stop itching, when you can finally sleep without seeing their faces in the dark. That's what I was learning in the weeks after Damian Ward was kicked out of his own company. For a few days, life almost felt normal again. I'd wake up early, go for a run through the quiet streets, drink coffee while scrolling through reports from the board, then head into the office. People looked at me differently now. Not just as the guy whose wife betrayed him, but as the man who turned the tables. But normalcy is an illusion when betrayal is still in your house. Harper stayed. She didn't pack a suitcase, didn't run to Damian's arms. Instead, she lingered in the mansion like a ghost who couldn't figure out if she belonged among the living. Every morning she'd come down dressed in silk robes, pour herself tea, and pretend we were still husband and wife. The thing is, routine is powerful. A part of me wanted to believe we could slip back into it, that she'd wake up one morning, look at me, and suddenly remember she loved me. But that part of me was dying piece by piece, every time she smiled like nothing had happened. One night I came home late from the office. Harper was in the kitchen, barefoot, drinking Chardonnay. She poured me a glass before I could ask. "Long day?" she asked. "They're always long," I said. She nodded, tracing her finger around the rim of her glass. "I never meant for it to get this bad, Will." I laughed, bitter and sharp. "You never meant for me to find out, you mean?" Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't argue. That silence told me everything. She wasn't sorry for what she did, only sorry for how it turned out. That was the moment I knew. There was no going back. This wasn't about saving our marriage. This was about ending it on my terms. The next morning, I called Patricia Hoffman. "It's time," I told her. She knew what I meant. The divorce proceedings started quietly. Harper still thought she held the upper hand, but Patricia had the receipts, the photos, the financial records. Infidelity in New York State meant leverage, and we had all of it. The first hearing was almost laughable. Harper sat across from me in a navy blue suit, chin lifted, pretending confidence. Her lawyer, some slick-talking midtown guy named Reynolds, tried to argue that Harper was entitled to half of everything. Patricia leaned forward, sliding a folder across the table. "Exhibit A," she said. Photos of Harper and Damian at the Hamptons. Receipts from hotels. Emails she thought she'd deleted. Reynolds flipped through them, his smirk fading. Harper's face turned pale. Patricia didn't stop. "Exhibit B, Damian Ward's financial collapse. Evidence that he attempted to leverage Mr. Carter's assets through his relationship with Mrs. Carter. Evidence that Mrs. Carter was complicit." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Mrs. Carter, do you dispute this?" Harper glanced at me, then at her lawyer, then shook her head ever so slightly. That was the beginning of the end, but endings aren't clean. They're jagged, messy, full of unexpected turns. A week later, Damian tried to crawl back from the grave. I was in my office when my assistant buzzed me. "There's a man here to see you. Says it's urgent." I didn't expect to see Damian Ward standing in the lobby, hair unkempt, suit wrinkled, eyes burning with desperation. "We need to talk," he said. "I don't think we do," I replied. "You don't understand. You think you've won, but you haven't. Those investors you're working with, they don't care about you either. They'll chew you up the same way they chewed me." I studied him. This wasn't the confident man who had stolen my wife. This was a man circling the drain, grabbing for anything to keep from drowning. "You ruined my marriage," I said flatly. She came to me. He snapped. "Don't rewrite history. She wanted out long before I showed up. I just gave her the exit she was too scared to take." His words stung more than I wanted to admit, but I held my ground. "What do you want, Damian?" He hesitated, then whispered, "A deal. Bring me back in. Give me a position, a paycheck, something. I can still help you." I stared at him, and for a brief moment I almost pitied him. Almost. "You're done," I said quietly. "In business. In this town. In my life. Done." His face twisted with rage. "You'll regret this, Carter. Everyone falls eventually, even you." He stormed out, and I never saw him again. Not in person, anyway. 6 months later, I heard through Gary that Damian had skipped town. Rumor was he'd been spotted in Miami, hustling investors with the same old lies. Men like him never really change. They just relocate the con. As for Harper, the divorce dragged on. She fought for the house, for the accounts, for pieces of a life she no longer valued. Patricia fought harder. By the time it was over, Harper walked away with less than she expected, and I walked away with more than I needed. But here's the thing, no lawyer tells you, winning in court doesn't heal your heart. The house felt empty. The bed felt colder than it should have. Even victory felt hollow when the price was trust shattered beyond repair. A few months after the divorce, I drove upstate to clear my head. Ended up at a little cabin by a lake, one I used to visit with my father when I was a kid. No phones, no boardrooms, no Harper. Just silence. I spent days fishing, chopping wood, staring at sunsets that didn't ask for anything. And in that silence, I started to remember who I was before the betrayal, before the war. One evening, sitting on the dock, I thought about Harper, about the way she laughed when we first met, about the plans we made, the promises whispered in the dark. And for the first time, I didn't feel rage. I felt nothing, and maybe that's what closure really is. Not the fire of revenge, not the cold satisfaction of victory, but the absence of weight. The day you can finally breathe without thinking of them. When I returned to the city, life went on. The company thrived under new management. I rebuilt friendships I'd neglected, reconnected with parts of myself I'd lost in the chase for success. Women came and went, but I wasn't searching for replacements. I was searching for myself. One night I walked past Mickey's bar. Gary waved me in, handed me a drink, and said, "You look lighter." "I feel lighter," I admitted. "You got your revenge?" "Yeah," I said. Then I smiled. But the real revenge was letting go. Gary raised his glass. To letting go, then. We clinked glasses. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about Harper or Damian or the wreckage they left behind. I was thinking about tomorrow, because tomorrow was mine again.